racism in the Labour Party.
And it is a day of shame for the Labour Party.
Virtue signalling from the Tory Party.
And it is crucial, let me say, that we have zero tolerance for any racism, any Islamophobia.
Oh, and this.
From Thursday until the start of December, you must stay at home.
These are the interesting times. Hello everybody, my name's Matt Johnson. Welcome to The Interesting Times, a show that likes to take a sideways swipe at politics right here in the UK. The Labour Party has suspended Jeremy Corbyn over his response to an anti-Semitic report. He's had the whip removed because clearly Keir Starmer is going to need it to beat the Labour Party up with.
Now there's talk of a civil war emerging within Labour. Well, let's talk to Sir Keir Starmer now. A very good morning to you.
Morning.
Look, first and foremost, on the back of what Jeremy Corbyn said yesterday, is there yet another need for the Labour Party to apologise to the Jewish community?
Well, I apologised yesterday in clear terms. I also apologised on the first day I took over as leader of the Labour Party for our failure to deal with anti-Semitism.
And Jeremy Corbyn's response to the findings were meh.
The numbers have been exaggerated, in my view. The public perception in an opinion poll last year was that 1/3 of all Labour Party members were somehow or other under suspicion of anti-Semitism. The reality is it was 0.3%.
Pretty sure you should have cleared that as an answer with your party leader first, chap, as his interpretation was a little different.
We have failed Jewish people, our members, our supporters, and the British public.
A case of the left hand not knowing what the left hand was doing. There has been, as you can imagine, quite the fallout with this. Len McCluskey, General Secretary of the Unite Union and one of the biggest backers of Labour, has said that suspending Corbyn could cost Labour the next general election, which is confusing. Didn't having him as the leader cost the Labour Party the last general election? There is talk of civil war, and the Daily Express was unsurprisingly only too happy to light the fuse, publishing the story last Friday as to how Nick Thomas-Symonds, the Shadow Home Secretary, apologised on BBC Question Time. They also produced the findings of a poll last Friday, which showed that over 82% believe that the Labour Party will not be able to recover from this in a generation, which sounds serious until you realise that this was a poll conducted by the Daily Express last Friday, and the "in a generation" quote wasn't even part of the poll. Just taken from the morally bankrupt cesspit that is the Daily Express comments section. And the Tories managed to get involved too. Having single-handedly found a cure for coronavirus, personally ensured all the children in England were fed and got a Brexit deal with the EU better than the one we currently have, and I've clearly just used up my annual supply of sarcasm, Michael Gove was so concerned about what was going on with the Labour Party that he sent a letter to Keir Starmer. Michael Gove raised questions about Jeremy Corbyn's fitness to be Prime Minister. Well, he seems to know what makes a good leader and what doesn't.
And I hoped that Boris Johnson would be someone who could ensure that the government followed the instructions of the British people and also build and unite a team around him in order to lead this country forward. But I've realised in the last few days that Boris isn't capable of building that team and providing that unity.
Then Dominic Raab went on to talk radio.
Well, there's only two political parties in British history that have ever been investigated for racism by the Equality and Human Rights Commission. One is the BNP, the other is the Labour Party.
Are you sure you want to go bringing up the BNP, Dom? I mean, I'm just saying that several reports show links between the BNP and the Tories, including Steve Griffin, who was the father of the BNP's chairman, Nick Griffin, and Conservative Party member for 53 years. Dennis Pearce was a BNP candidate for going to the Tories. An investigation showed there to be between 150 and 200 ex-BNP members that are now Tory party members. All of this happened after the investigation into the BNP in 2010. A lot of the BNP may be gone, but it's pretty clear where they've gone to. But I get why the Raab it in the headlights is doing this. The Tories seem to be quite happy to deflect attention from anything they're doing. I wouldn't be surprised if Matt Hancock doesn't start his next press briefing on what Craig Revel-Horwood's problem with Caroline Quentin's Paso Doble is. The arm wasn't straight, That's a problem. You're going into the turn with a bent arm. What's the matter with you? Anyway, look, Labour, you're clearly still learning, but when it comes to potentially damaging investigations, take a leaf out of the Tories book. There are 3 ways to handle an investigation. Firstly, not with the investigating team and system. The EHRC was set up by New Labour in 2007 with a budget of £70 million. Since the Tories came to power, that figure has been reduced to £17 million, which means, of course, a whole lot less investigating going on. And Pavita Cooper, one of the commissioners on the EHRC, was appointed by the Conservative Party government and has failed to declare making no donation to the Conservative Party for £3,500. After all, the most surefire way to get away with murder is to own the police. Secondly, the look the other way approach with things like the Russia report by simply not doing your job of looking into Russian interference. When the investigation comes along, you got nothing to hand over. Sorted. And finally, simplest answer, don't have one. So you can say things like, now is not the time. That's what the blobbers did with Dominic Cummings breaking lockdown. Although at least Sir Starmer has learned one thing from the monkey man masquerading as our Prime Minister. This.
That's what they wanted. They wanted the Labour Party to recognise the hurt and pain, accept the findings, and to move on.
Yeah, right. So over in the US, they are gearing up for the presidential elections next week. And the orange psycho did what he did best and called up favourites from as many friends as he could, including from the National Farage.
A friend of mine, a lot of people say one of the most powerful men in Europe.
Nobody calls him the most powerful man in Europe. That's another of your influences. Nigel Farage isn't even the most powerful man in South Thanet, where he stood twice unsuccessfully to get elected. Nigel then joined the dumpster on stage, making it the creepiest double act since this one.
Grab that position about there. That's good. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. And then rolled out the formulaic rhetoric that we know.
And a man who in 4 years hasn't just cut your taxes, hasn't just improved the economy, but a man who right now...
Nearly 250,000 deaths from COVID?
Oh, I'm non-controversial and shy compared to you.
Yep, still killing it.
This is the single most resilient and bravest person I have ever met in my life.
Braver than Aaron Banks and Steve Bannon? Surely not. But the most on-the-nose comment from that cringe fest came from the Transifier himself.
He's responsible for a lot of things that have happened over in Europe.
Can't argue with that. Long-time subscribers to the show will know that somebody made a bold prediction on this show. Looking over the Atlantic to the orangutan in the Oval Office and saying he won't be re-elected. And keeping with the American thing, I'm taking the Second Amendment on that and sticking to my guns. Let's play a round of what happened next. This is from 6 months ago.
I have to say I'm very worried about the possibility of a second wave. Now the risk becomes greater with the opening up of the lockdown too early.
And the government's response from 6 months ago.
And while we remain vigilant, we do not believe there is currently a risk of a second peak of infections that might overwhelm the NHS.
Then from 5 months ago...
Headlines for you at 6 o'clock this morning. As England prepares for a major easing of lockdown restrictions, senior medics warn urgent action is needed to make sure the UK is prepared for the real risk of another coronavirus outbreak in the winter.
And the government's response from 5 months ago.
I don't want a second national lockdown. Julian, I think it would be completely wrong for this country.
From 4 months ago.
But what about a second wave? Another outbreak of COVID-19 that could bring everything to a halt once again and strike during the winter months when health services are already stretched.
And the government's response.
There's speculation in the press today, but it's not something I've seen within the department. The Prime Minister's been very clear on this. He doesn't want to see another national lockdown.
I was thinking of spinning it out and taking it through the last few months, and trust me, I've got the footage, but it's all just too predictably depressing. Oh, and from just last month, this has aged well.
He wants to close pubs, he wants to close bars, he wants to close businesses in areas across the country where the incidence is low, and that's what he wants to do.
But you all know where this is going to end at this point, with this pointless Prime Minister.
So now is the time to take action because there is no alternative. And from Thursday until the start of December, you must stay at home.
Yeah, lockdowns tend to be like a chocolate digestive, a YouTube clip on cats, or Boris Johnson's extramarital fumbles. Once was never going to be enough. So what was the Prime Monster doing during this time? So this was 6 months ago.
For Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. Nobody, as far as I understand, seems to know the words.
5 months ago.
But if it is correct that the BBC is saying that they will not sing the words of Land of Hope and Glory and Rule Britannia, as
4 months ago.
And when you've been struggling with something in the classroom or whatever, some concept that you can't get, like the supine stem of confetti or nuclear fusion, or is Harry Potter sexist?
The problem is that COVID doesn't care if you sing Rule Britannia or not. And in fact, it will probably want you to sing it, especially like this. But having a clear and definite strategy to cope with it is important. Sage were telling the government in September a second lockdown is needed, just like they were telling them at the start of the year. But Boris's approach is the same as the one with the EU. Look them dead in the eye and hope that they'll blink first. One undisputable fact, which is becoming rather obvious, is you can't bluff a virus. However, a lot of bankbenchers aren't happy about the second lockdown. Keep an eye on Wednesday when this goes in front of Parliament for ratification. It will pass. Labour has said they'll support it, but how many Tory rebels will there be? Because if another of my predictions is correct, this might be Boris's last Christmas at number 10. And wouldn't that just be the start for 2021? Well, that's it for another week. Thank you all so much for watching. And if you are enjoying these vids, please subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you don't miss another. And I'll see you all next Monday. Take care.